This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of our investment group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Abhijit Barua. Mr. Barua is one of the leading experts in new business and startup. Mr. Barua, thank you for all you do, and you had a very distinguished career, and thank you for coming to our show. So, for the global audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and why did you get involved with the startup business? Are you trying to create a Silicon Valley in India?
Uh, Something like that. It's a small beginning. In fact, I have spent more than 2 decades in the tech industry. I have been privileged to be part of the first private telecom company in India, Wipro British Telecom, way back 2 decades, more than 2 decades back. Then I have worked with last with Vodafone Group. I was running a $1 billion business unit for them, and I was lucky to be part of the Hewlett Packard's reinvention in the direct go-to-market in the telecom industry. And I did a little bit of work with a fair amount of companies to experience enough to say that it's time for me to build something for the community. And that's one of the reasons why I stepped out and I said, let's be deliver back something to the society, to the to community. And that's when a couple of years back, I got on my own and tried to find how I can discover myself to the world of startups and create a value which I can be proud of what I have done thus far, and for people around me. And with that in mind, I figured out that smartphones is one element which is very important and a very element in terms of connecting the physical world to the digital world. And its importance is very important, especially in the emerging markets in Asia and Africa, from the perspective that many of them their daily wages depends upon the smartphone being working and be available to them. And
Okay.
and there's a big problem in smartphones is that because it's small and slick and carried everywhere around, a huge amount of them get stolen, and around 150 million smartphones get lost or stolen
Right.
every year.
Right.
And that's a number which I said for many people in emerging markets in South Asia or in Africa, it is the most valuable asset they own. And from
Correct.
that perspective, I've seen people who cry when they lose their phone because they have to save like as much as 5 months to buy their own smartphone, right? And without that, they can't even earn the next day. And with that, we
Right.
created the MiFon platform, which fundamentally solves one problem: is that how we can protect people's smartphones. We are lucky in the last
Right.
couple of years to have amassed a trust of around 3.5 million users, and we're getting good traction overall. And we believe that it can be a fantastic way to help people strike on their own and build their future economy as the first time user of the internet and services around the digital economy.
So, what's the name of your what apps? Tell us a little bit about for what's the name of
It's
that?
the app is we call it the company is called MyPhone Labs. It is like my
Okay.
phone, so it is like your phone, and we call it
Okay,
my
I got
phone.
you.
It's a small name we put right, and it basically protects the phone from getting lost and the data in it, as well as it also helps you connect and secure your family by having a nice, neat,
Okay.
small,
Okay.
secured map of your family. If there is somebody's in emergency, they can call emergency alert. Works pretty well. It's very popular in the small markets, in the market outreach we have done in India, in South Asia, Africa. There's a lot of traction that we're getting, and we love the fact that we are able to help people because a lot of people write to us, and we get very happy that they say, "You helped me save get my phone back," and that's the best thing we can hear
That is
about. And
correct.
there are a lot of
Yeah,
things that
that's
happens around it, right? So it's a small
a
thing,
wonderful
like
thing to do.
right.
Go
It
ahead.
touches
You
people who are
serve.
actually on the streets,
Go
right?
ahead. So you're serving the humanity in a very positive manner. Tell us a little bit about Modi
Right.
government launched the Startup India Action Plan. Did this make any difference? And do you think the private sectors are buying it? Do you think they provide any kind of a money? And do you think they can create an environment for the entrepreneur to flourish? They have to create a lot of jobs because close to several million jobs every month. And they have not been very successful in doing so. There's a lot of talk.
Uh, if you ask me upfront, if you ask me whether Startup India was successful, I don't believe they have even reached 1% of what they could have possibly done. But there are very many reasons around it. But if I look at the numbers, the results or the numbers I have as of end of last year, at the completion of the third year of the Startup India initiative, 150 odd companies got benefited with the fund they created. And we are supposed to do, India is supposed to do 10,000 startups, right? And I think there are fundamental issues in terms of the implementation which they have been done and the bureaucracy they built around it. Where in this world can you expect a interministerial board to decide whether MiFon is an innovative startup or not? I can't believe it. I will respect you or people like you who stall and walk the streets to figure out what happens in a startup's mind and how it is different from a normal corporate or a bureaucrat, right? I mean, I lose my, I have to struggle every day to make sure I pay salaries to my team, make sure I move ahead the next month. That's not their priority. And that's one part of it. But the intent might have been very good, but the objectives they've taken were way off the whack. I mean, I don't think they were anything too close to reality because startups doesn't come because there is money. Government cannot become VCs, and Silicon Valley
Exactly.
was not built in a year, right?
Well,
So I
you,
think that's some of it.
Silicon Valley took about 50 to about 60 years to build it, and there's no question about. They also
Right.
have the Stanford University, and that allows them to flourish and to incubate some of the ideas. And so, so I know you have done some startup business that you incorporate in Singapore. Can that help India start a business also, or can
So
can
yeah,
India create? Can and let me ask you this: can India create environment for innovations and entrepreneurship, which is lacking there in India? That's the
it's
reason people
very,
come to
very
United States and other places they go to, right?
right. I mean, you actually asked a very complex question, but the straight answer is that it's a long path. The Indian software industry started in the 80s, and it took them 20 plus years to reach the state they are today, right? And you can't build everything overnight, right? It takes its own time, and there are certain things you need to do. You need to figure out what is to be done. But yes, it can be done if there are the intent or they understand what a startup needs. Startup doesn't need bureaucrats to get involved. Startup needs policies which are cohesive for a startup. Startup needs infrastructure. The support infrastructure requires the right policies so that startups can go and operate without and innovate without having any intervention until they become competent enough to become an organization that is scalable. And that's something is missing in the whole plan of action or action plan they build up for Startup India. They put a bureaucratic process. There is, for the lack of a more diplomatic word, corruption. And there are a few who get chosen. And I tried it. In fact, I tried setting up a company in India, and it didn't work out for me. And I went to government establishments. I went to SIDBI, I went to NSISE, and everywhere they wanted a cut of whatever money is available from so-called government funds available for small scale and micro industries, right? And then you have to go to the banks. If you go to the banks, they don't give you anything without a
Money,
collateral. Yeah, without money and
yeah,
collateral. I mean,
the
you
one
have you
the
you
one
have
your first baby. The banker wants your first
right.
baby, and if you have the money, they
Absolutely.
will lend to you. If you do not have the money, they will lend to you.
Absolutely. So that's one part. And then the next part is that when you're so what is it? That's one part of financing. Then I try to incorporate a company in India. It's a hell of a process. You need something like a Shop and Establishment Act to get it started. Things are better than when I tried attempting right now, but still it seems to be as tough as it is, or difficult and ambiguous. And then you have the other issue is that when you get operational, the amount of paperwork you have to maintain to be compliant. And then you've heard about the angel tax and the tax notices to people for the valuation stuff, which is like, get notices and all that. People get scared. And I actually really wanted to have a company back in India, and it didn't work out for me at all. And then a couple of investors, which I was talking to in India, so-called angel investors, but they're because of probably the environment, they were only like trying to back the winners. They didn't want to do something new. If I made the 50th variation of Uber or Airbnb, they're ready to write a check. And they will write a check to the winners, right? But if
Right.
I want something different, because I'm always product centric, I want to create a product which is scalable, which is useful to the end user. They said nobody has done it, so there is no opportunity. Get out of it. The moment I formed the company in Singapore, I got a China American investment firm to back me up,
Okay.
and it
So
happened
they're
almost like a
venture.
45-minute call. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, they're venture
Yeah,
capital.
so they're an incubator venture
Right.
accelerator come
Right.
incubator at, like you might be knowing about them, Scott O'Sullivan Fund and Sean O'Sullivan Fund, and they actually SOSV, and they actually really understood where I am from, and I'll tell you, it took like 45 minutes to close the deal,
Can you
and they
believe that?
literally wired the money up there.
Can you believe that? And that's how the entrepreneurship flourishes, and it creates the
Absolutely correct.
innovation.
Right. So I actually was in a second mind to go and start up in the US because it's Delaware. I can open a company fairly quickly.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
these guys were good enough to tell that, okay, do it here. We're good with it. And that's an advice which I got some good friends I had, which I built out over the years. Right. I spent years in the industry. It's become easy. And I've been interacting with the incubators and the mentors and people who are actually so-called mentors in India. They're very good people. And they always say that before you can tell how many zeros are in a billion, people are there and saying, I've got $1 billion opportunity. And people believe in them, right? So our thing is very clear. I'm not bothered about bringing $1 billion company. I said, if I can add value and create a 10, 20 million valuation in the next couple of years, and I can build value for people to come and participate and share the wealth, I can be successful. And that's how you build value, right? It's not, you have to
Let,
be
let,
lucky. But if you're doing the
let
right
me
stuff,
ask
things
you.
will follow.
Let me ask you, Abhijit. Let's suppose I want to start a business in India, and I live in somewhere in New Delhi, and I'm an IIT graduate, and I want to start up. I got some ideas. What kind of a business plan do I need to write or do to attract the investor from India or from foreign countries to make a difference? What would be the advice for you for those startup company? I have done startup myself, and so,
Right.
but it's in America. It's not a, and America has provided me the letters of opportunities because of its inclusiveness and openness, which does not exist in India. That provided me opportunity to succeed. These are the strengths and the values and qualities of America that all of us can proudly and truly embrace. Mosque
So it's a very
and
interesting
church,
question. Yeah.
mosque and temples do not create jobs. They create
Absolutely.
the,
You don't judge people. You don't judge
exactly.
people is the first thing, right? You don't judge
Right.
people. Only judge whether there is a value you can do in a conversation. Do not get in a conversation without trying to add value, right?
So
It has
tell
to be
us a little bit
constructive.
about.
So what you asked is a
I gave
very,
you an
very
example.
right? You got a very interesting question. The answer is not very easy, but if I can say that if India in the current environment, if you're looking at the investors that are available or who are in the system now, probably if you're going to start up, you're going to look at the angel stuff. There are lead angels and a couple of guys, interesting guys up there in Delhi. But there are different climates in each of the cities. Like Bombay investors are different from the Delhi investors and the one in the Bangalore. Bangalore ones are the closest to Silicon Valley. They trust you. They work with you. The Delhi ones are the guys who actually look at you from what value they can create from you before they give you the value. I've been up in tongue in cheek. So they'll cut a deal somewhere else before negotiating a deal with you. And probably you'll be successful in India anyway if you make the 65th avatar of Airbnb or Uber or one of this, Spotify, rather than creating something new. And it's a struggle. If I'm going to do a startup next time in India, I will copy some model that's already established. It'll be easier to raise money. After you raise money, you can pivot it off. But yes, so I mean, but at the same time, if I am going to be one of the guys who have got the money to write a check, and there's somebody presenting in front of me, if you're asking from that perspective, if I have the money, I write a check. I'll look at people. I'll look at the people who have the idea rather than look at the idea as a value. Who has created the idea? And whether this guy has got a conviction and whether they have the capability to build a team, because that's more required. They can. Startup is all about follow up and inspiration. It's not about just getting a check and talking to the press and creating a product out of it. The product obviously will have a solution to some problem, whether they understood the problem, whether the problem is solvable, whether it is possible to solve the problem at a cost lower than the value perceived by the audience or the customers they are trying to serve. I think those are the parameters I will look at. And there, I think there are a lot of problems in South Asia, not even taking India, which can be very, very interesting to solve. For example, the traffic issue, right? I mean, we spent, if you're in
Right.
Delhi or in Bombay or Bangalore, I spent like 3-4 hours trying to get from one place to the other. And that's a fantastic problem to solve. Eventually, it'll get solved. I don't know how it gets solved, but somebody will solve it. If somebody's thinking about a solution like that, we will definitely have backers. Not that those investors are sitting here in India trying to solve it, but those are stuff that I will be very interested to want somebody to ask for and find a solution around.
So going back to Abhijit, I'm a startup company. How do I track what do I have to do to write my business plan to attract the investor, the venture capitalist, and also an environment that where I can flourish, which means you have to have incubator, which means you have to have a seed money that can help me to start the business, and also you have to be working with some of the uh, companies, and not the companies, but the what I consider the universities, which can also produce the ideas in order for you to flourish, in order for you to become a startup investor.
Yeah, so for a startup to write a business plan, I think it's more to illustrate. I mean, I don't think you need to make a business plan which got financial projections, because the financial projection will be wrong. I think the first and the last thing that a startup, a person with an idea to build a startup has to do is to have the clarity of thought. What problem do they see they can solve? And I think
Right.
that's fundamentally the biggest stuff. I don't think. I mean, if somebody asked me, and a lot of investors I've met on the way. I mean, I met about 100 guys who were about to write a check, and I met about all of them was for a financial plan of 3 or 5 years, which I can never predict. The only thing I can do is that I can have the conviction of have the insights, the understanding of the problem, and the various one of the ways to solve it. And as long as there's a chemistry with the investors, which I can build. I mean, it's important for the startup to also choose the investors, not just run the check. And it's always important to be cost efficient. It's like a cockroach. I mean, I said we're like a cockroach. I mean, if you have the money, we'll build it based on what we have, rather than try to blow up the money because I have the check, right? I've seen people having like spending $60 for acquiring a user, and they know that very well that they can't even get a dollar out of the guy. And at the same time, we believe in trying to say, okay, can I reduce my cost of acquiring a consumer to $1 or half a dollar, and then add value to him so that perceived value is higher than the money I paid to acquire him, and then build an ecosystem which is sustainable, right? So that's where I think fundamentally a startup should look for. I think business plans are something that can come in only when the startup becomes a business. The business plan could be more of like how you monetize it. Like if you're trying to build a next version of Amazon or Flipkart in India, it's very well known that with the GDP per capita standing of India as of now, there is no on earth any of these companies will make money until that thing rises around $4,000 and above, where people can afford to buy something in a way it is done, right? So I think we
So
have to be
the
very fundamental about certain economic, right? Sorry?
so companies like a Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon probably is not going to happen in India for a while, right?
Unless maybe they're able to do it with the kind of thing they're doing by not telling us what they're doing. That's a different part about it, right? But I think the
Right.
Chinese, the Japanese investors are very clear about how they're approaching the
Yes.
market. I think what they have done is like they said they will kill the ad business world, by the data trading business, the privacy business, by going and creating a model where they build all the transactions inside, right? Like if you look at SoftBank and Alibaba, they're all going and buying the payment companies along with the services companies together and building into an ecosystem where they can control a huge chunk of the GDP, right? At one time, I was talking about Lee Ka-sing in Hong Kong controlling 40 or 50% of Hong Kong GDP. And this is a new avatar of the onslaught happening from the investors in the global economy, where they're going to control a huge chunk of the transactions, and they can actually literally print digital notes. And you have all the transactions of Ola and Uber into Paytm and Flipkart or wherever they are investing in Paytm Mall, putting them all together, then they actually have transactions built in, and that's why they're going to go on, right? So that is going to definitely have an issue with the future plans of investing into countries like India or emerging markets, which going to change the digital economy, right?
Let me say the following, and I have two questions for you. India has one of the largest and the best human resources that they can use that to ignite the startup companies. There's no question about that. My question to you First question, what India diaspora can do to help ignite the startup companies in India? And number two is, what advice do you have for a person who just wants to start up the business, who's young, aggressive, got all kinds of ideas, and he doesn't know where to start? And how do you help them? What kind of advice do you have for them?
So there are two things. I think from the country perspective, the region perspective, I think it's very important to focus on mentors and accelerators, because they are like the finishing schools. One of the gap that I've seen in the education system or the institutes in India is that there's very little connect with the industry. And the output for, I was talking to one gentleman from one of the largest IT company in India last week, and in Delhi, and he was saying that the biggest issue is that they're not going to get talent to hire, although their produce output from the institutes are very high, and people get out of tech institutes and they're not able to get a job because there's a big gap in what they produce and what is the requirement in the market. Something like what Israel tried, like
so
a finishing school.
they do not have the skill. They are talented, but
They
they do
have
not
the
have the
skills.
skill. Okay.
They don't have the skills that is needed by the market. So if I have to hire,
Exactly. Exactly.
I have to hire and train them for 18 months or so before I can get them to produce what I want to produce, right? So that's a gap we need to address. It can be easily addressed if there's a little bit of alignment with the respected professors and the academicians to connect with the industry and figure out what is the need of the company.
So
We don't longer need
partnership.
to.
What you need is a
Yes, I think that
public and private partnership.
yes, public-private relation on education and the connect, so that there is a pool of skilled ones. Because I would love to create that. In fact, I'm talking to one of the academic register of one university, trying to fill up what Infosys or TCS or Tech Mahindra needs. How we can bridge that by creating the program they create for people who they hire. So what happens? You get people directly output from a course, whether it's a diploma or an engineering course, who can directly work and start working on the first day of work, almost to an extent, right? They only really show this is your seat, this is what you need to do, and that has a big gap that is there. That's one part. The other part is that unlike the California, Silicon Valley, we don't have enough events where there's an opportunity for the students or the budding output to go and connect with the industry. I mean, what do they know? What skills they need to learn? I think we can start with having the professors and the educations, the guys who would actually administer the education to connect, to know what is happening today. They can't be teaching them HTML. Collaborate, right? And they because they should be also, so they participate in the whole process. And that's like inevitable. They have to do it, because otherwise the whole chain of academic degrees in India, if you look at what has happened every year, if you go and look it up, I mean, you have 99.5%, but you didn't get a seat. That should not happen. I mean, do have too much of competition for just getting marks, but you don't get a job after getting out, right? And a lot of people who come out, I can't even tell them what not to do. At the same time, what I find out is that's not happening in the rest of the world. If I look at Taiwan, for example, they have a fantastic job with the education stream. If I go and set up there, I mean, the cost of getting people is very low cost. It's available at a very stable environment. Attrition is low. And that's the opposite of what's happening here. Easily done, but you need to have intent.
Yeah, you're absolutely, and also there's not an environment for them to excel. And I think and also to develop their skill to be part of the 21st century workforce. Let's talk about what India diaspora can help to reignite, to retransform, to create environment for startup companies in India.
So if I may, for example,
go ahead.
The government cannot become the VC, right? That's not something. So I think
that is correct.
Fundamental. I mean, you have to do. Right. So I think fundamental. So first, obviously, other than building better infrastructure so that startups can locate and they have reasonable housing costs, so they can move and transport to way of work and work as many hours they want. That's one part. The other part, I think, fundamental. If they really want to scale up the economy to whatever they call it, a 5 trillion economy, I think the very easy part is to look at, like, India has like almost 500 million or 500 million people below the poverty line, right? I think very simple. If you can create a process, it's very simple to create a program which can actually enable this 1% of them, which is 5 million, to build a $1 million business. You just need a cookie cutter stuff for that, right? and you create enough enablers. You don't need like a Stanford or a Harvard or a Princeton guy to do that. You just need a common sense guy to go and execute it. Even I can do it. I can help do that, right? And if you create that, you're creating 5 million entrepreneurs who are creating a 1 million business. It's nothing much, right? And that accounts for $5 trillion of incremental value that gets created for the next 2 or 3 years. I think that's what fundamentally the government should do. The other part is that government should segregate two parts. One is the application of technologies from creation of research and other facilities, right? I mean, everybody in the startup industry is talking of either blockchain or ML or AI because it's good to talk about it. But 99.9% people outside the US and UK are actually doing applications. There's no research done. Nobody's creating algorithms. And that's a tough part. And nobody's there to support it, right? I think that's a fundamental stuff. That's where probably government fund right people to go and do something and not ask them every year what's going to happen, because it's a 7 to 10 years process for them to create value. But it's fundamental for the long term to sustain, because things will move. And that's one part very, very important for the do. So segregating the one for the people, one for the technology. So there's a global play. And as you must have noticed, or you must have observed, that there is no meta happening in India.
Mentorship.
So India has not meta innovation,
meta.
or meta is created, right?
Oh, that's right. But then
there's no Twitter, no Google.
No Twitter, no Google.
Mentorship, no Twitter, no Google kind of creation. You just create a copy of something, right?
Right.
So that's not happening because everybody has a short vision, right? So that's something we should look forward and say, okay, it's very tough to do it, because if you want to create a product, a real product which is different, you invest time and money, and it takes like 7 years, 10 years to be unprofitable to get there, but you're creating value on the way. And that support the government can do long term. And the other part is to enable the 500,000 or 600 million below poverty line people to go and engage in the community, and they can serve because they know what's the problem they're facing, they can solve it. How we mentor them, that's the mentor part of it. And create not we works of the world, but I work of the world, right? Where you can go and create small facilities where people are available to help them out, access the internet, which is very important. Of the 1.3 billion people in India, probably 300 million can have access to the internet, actually, beyond what you say. So those are things we can accept.
But before we close our conversation, give some advice to the audience who just wants to start up a business, who wants to be like you one day.
Okay, so one part is very simple. Find a problem that you can solve. Find a problem. Don't find a solution, right? So I think that's the most fundamental stuff. There are too many things you can do. Find a problem that you can solve, and enjoy solving the problem. And then you will be there. I mean, there'll be enough friends and people that you can relate to, communicate, hyper communicate, and people will be there to help you around. I've seen it my own way. I raise more money from friends and family and fools than from investors, because I know they trust me and they have opened more doors for me than others. I have my ex-bosses working and advising me today in my board, and my earning checks for me to sustain. So that's very important to have the community. It's like your own, they have become my family, right? And they all sustain, they give you the best advice. So important to get connected with it. You can't do anything all of it. Nobody can solve a problem of hunger, for instance. Don't try to solve it. Try to figure out how you can make 10 people eat better. It's like the old saying of, don't teach people, don't catch a fish for somebody, teach them how to catch a fish. They will live for a lifetime. And that's simple as that.
Yeah. So those are the advice for you. Do you see a brighter horizon in India for the startup companies, and especially to create an environment for the people to innovate, to be entrepreneur? And do you think the entrepreneurs are born or they're made?
Entrepreneurs are, everybody is an entrepreneur by default, and it's only our education and upbringing actually put it the other way around, right? I've been studying very closely the American education. The way they've been taught to do something and deliver something on their own, while we still are stuck with our clerical type of education, right? But I think it's inevitable. It has to improve. It has to become better, because there is a need of the market. If we don't do it, we will not succeed. We will not be able to feed ourselves. So there's no other way. There's no way there is a job created in this age of AI and ML. So you'll have to do something on your own, and there are enough problems to be solved. And I say, like, if you drive across in Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, right? So
I
you
like
need to
what you
solve the
do.
problem of traffic, and I want somebody to do that.
Yeah, right, right. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barua, for your time, and thank you for coming here,
Thank you.
and thank you for all you do to make a meaningful and profound difference in people's life. And I hope people follow your advice, and one day they will be like you, so that they can create the
Thank
next generation, and they can be the best they can be, and be a lifelong learner, just like you are. So, thank you very
you.
much for watching. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week.